I am NetMoverSitan. And Moses, well, things weren't looking good for her and her associates, as Vesper Crabro was free once more. That and there were distortions nearby. Yeah, that Harvest Festival sounds like a Sin Eater type arrangement. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of that, it's one of the worst jobs in the medieval period, where a piece of bread is put on the grave of the deceased, and then the idea is the sin of that person would be absorbed into the bread, and the Sin Eater is one who literally eats the sin by eating the bread. And this makes them a social pariah, since they are full of the sins of others. In this case, the Harvest Festival draws out the filth, or the distortion, out of everyone in that village. And one person at random is chosen to take it all on. And all those who have taken it all on are dumped in the basement. A basement where Ezra was unconscious, Moses was straining her artificial arm to open the door that Uriah made for her atelier, to release Vesper in order to have any chance of getting out of there alive, and he was not happy with her. Vesper wanted Moses to take responsibility for what she's done, but before that, they have a more immediate problem to deal with. The threat posed by creatures similar to what was filmed in that footage. He sliced through any that he could get to. As for his harpoon, he called for it to return to him. His Hondo was wielded in a flamboyant yet disciplined way. He sliced off the tentacle of one of them before it reached him, along with a beastly paw. He thrust his sword and harpoon into each to make sure that they were dead. Then, the distortions changed back into mutilated human corpses, which scattered the distortions extracted, likely returning to whoever they belonged to. Vesper was likely one with augmentations that allowed him to last 2 weeks without water, never mind food. He was able to slice through more of them, and Moses deduced that the most dangerous one was in the deepest corner of that room. The victim of the first festival, who took on the distortions of 100 people. She saw it as suicide for her and Ezra to take this on. Moses tried to warn Vesper about the distortions, but Vesper gave her a warning shot with a harpoon that grazed her face. This was because Vesper didn't want her to talk to him unless he asked her first, due to her breaking his trust. Which was an understandable reaction, where the next time she speaks without his permission, or rather speaks to him, he'll slit her throat. Moses well, she wisely chose not to follow up on that, understanding that nothing that she said would get through to him. Ezra was lacking her mask distortion. That, among others, was extracted from her. For it to be returned, Dewey had to die. At this point, it'd do him a favour. Her usual methodology wouldn't work there, as there was multiple distortions in one form. Vesper was physically dismantling them. "45 people needed to die for Ezra to return to normal. Well, at least Dewey needed to die, as he appeared to have that distortion in him. The townsfolk will also be subject to the backlog of distortions. She'll have problems solving theirs. That much was clear. Moses understood that it was of Han Hee-joon's design for this to be caused. He wanted a distortion of a singular pattern, a pure one manifested from a single person. 57 unmixed distortions up for grabs. Moses understood that saving everyone wasn't possible. Certainly not there, as their fates were sealed before they even set foot there. Killing the ones in the cellar would be a mercy, and as for the ones in the town, that would require her... require her and Ezra to not run away. Unfortunately, her pipe was still in Vesper's possession. Moses asked Uriah if there was any equipment in her workshop that she could use, intending to use it herself. But Uriah warned her that those gadgets had Ezra's strength in mind. She believed that it would be too strong for Moses to handle. Moses just needed something to deal one huge blow. Her artificial arm could handle the recoil. Uriah fetched something from her atelier, while Moses searched for Dewey. Or rather, what's left of him. Once Dewey was taken down, Ezra would regain consciousness and Moses would be able to talk to Vesper without the risk of losing her head. Moses is used to sacrificing the lesser for the greater, and she's aware of the cost, where it felt like a piece of her heart was cut out each time. She was able to locate the distortion that used to be Dewey, crawling in the corner. It wasn't hostile, but it was wriggling, spewing butterflies, bubbles, paint, and a number of other things. Uriah then brought a giant power gauntlet made for Ezra. Moses equipped that on her right arm, although Uriah warned that it was built with Ezra in mind. Moses asked how to use it. Uriah instructed her to clench and unclench her fist twice, and then make a fist. Throw a punch once the gauntlet turns red. Moses intended to end them in a single blow, as painless as possible, understanding that Dewey might be aggressive if provoked. She did as Uriah instructed. The glove vibrated, and it released hot steam. There was an illusion of choice in this matter, as there always seemed to be a right answer. When the glove was heated and the steam escaped, it made an intense noise. Vesper looked at her briefly before heading back to slashing distortions. Then she threw her fist at the wall. This resulted in crushing flesh and exploding mechanical parts. Much to Uriah's fear, it caused some injury. Moses injected herself with a painkiller. Dewey's corpse reverted to human form. Well, at least the surviving lower half. The upper half was pulverized, and partially on Moses. As for Moses, she needed a new arm as the recoil destroyed it. It also tore off her right shoulder. Yuria was right about the power gauntlet being too strong for her body, but it served its purpose regardless. The mask on Ezra's face returned, and Moses did what she could to wake her up. Ezra received a rude awakening, as Moses had her arm destroyed again. Yeah, I know. Ezra can't get knocked out for a few minutes without Moses getting hurt. She replied to her scolding with, she didn't do so by choice. At least, no other choice that would mean their survival. All they needed to do now was to get her pipe back from Vesper. Ezra was asking what he was doing outside. Moses decided to explain it later as they had more immediate problems. Apparently Ezra needed Yuria to make more pendants to manifest cyclaments, so Moses decided that they could at least try and bluff Vesper. She whispered to Ezra that a harpoon would come their way soon, while handing Ezra her combat glove. One that her body is able to handle. Moses called for Vesper. He then shot his harpoon not long after. Thankfully, Ezra deflected it by kicking its shaft with her right leg. It was then stuck on the floor. He stood in front of Moses, reminding her that he warned her not to speak to him. He had bits and pieces of distortions covering him. He asked her if she wanted to put a conclusion to their conflict now. His hair was rumpled. He was haggard and gaunt, which wasn't a surprise considering that he was in Yuria's atelier for a little over 2 weeks. Yet he wasn't tired at all. Ezra acted confident, asking him if he thinks that he can handle them in that condition. And then Moses told him that it wasn't a deal. It was a threat. He'll die there if he doesn't follow her orders, as they're now in District 11. At first, he found this amusing. Then he found out that, well, let's just say he registered that he was a little out of touch due to being trapped in Yuria's atelier for a little over 2 weeks. Finding out that he's in District 11 rather than District 14, which meant that they were now outside of his jurisdiction. They did what they did to survive, much as he was hunting them down to get the work done. Moses kept her emotions in check, however. As for what she wants her pipe back, along with her right arm. Vesper complied with the pipe, but as for the right arm, he ate it. Well, considering that there was no kitchen, never mind water, he had to survive however he could. Yeah, in this case, cannibalism was an act of desperation, rather than a lifestyle choice. This triggered Ezra, and she charged at him, striking his left cheek with her fist. He responded by striking her chest with his left knee. They were going all out. Yuria compared it to a fight between a golden retriever and a Doberman. Well, I think we can guess which one is which, don't we? Moses understood that Yuria put her thoughts into words, and then told Ezra to stop, as even if she got her right arm back, the loss of her right shoulder made its reattachment impossible. She could get a new artificial arm. Well, she's not exactly a purist when it comes to body parts. She asked if Vesper Crabro saw the footage. He confirmed that he did, and he spat out sputum mixed with blood. She explained that what he was fighting was the same kind of creature in that video. They're distortions. These ones were artificially created, amalgamations of the distortions of multiple people. She compared it to that of the pianist. Vesper understood that there are similarities to the monsters in the outskirts. Moses let him understand it as that, and told him that simple physical force isn't enough to deal with some of them. At least not by itself, as they don't always attack physically. Vesper was asking how to terminate them. Moses replied by telling him that she needs the powers of her pipe. Yuria then handed Moses a twining ribbon once she got it from her workshop. Vesper asks Moses why she took up her occupation. Moses replied that it was to learn about the distortion. This irritated Vesper, as she was acting out of simple curiosity. He called her selfish, as he's lost much thanks to her. She didn't deny that she was selfish, as she was acting for the sake of self-preservation. She knew that neither of them was following a noble cause to begin with, asking if Vesper was seeking sympathy from her. This irritated Vesper, but he got the point. He didn't delude himself into believing that neither of them was deluding themselves into believing that they were doing anything but their jobs. As for that ribbon, it was an orange ribbon, and Moses needed Ezra to tie it onto her pipe. She then blew the white breath into the pipe, which shrouded Vesper and Ezra, while also permeating the yellow hondo of Vesper, along with Ezra's gloves. Vesper wanted to know what was going on. Moses explained that they have protection from psychological damage, and now their hits have more than a physical impact. Moses and Yuria much earlier devised what was based on the application of the white breath to shield from mental attacks, a way of using it offensively. Well, Vesper and Ezra took care of every distortion in the cellar that was in their way. And then they can solve the distortions of the townspeople above. As for when that's over, Moses told Vesper she'll do what she could to straighten out her situation. Vesper told her that she had a way with words. They then headed into the deeper areas, where, as they progressed, the distortions were more chaotic in appearance. Vesper crushed them easily, while Vesper cut them down. And as they did so, they left a trail of mutilated corpses behind them. Those that were lethally freed from the distortion. Moses still hadn't grown indifferent to the price that she had to pay for what she did, where she was combating sins seemingly on a regular basis. She continued regardless. Their combined forces easily took care of what was in their way. Then in the deepest area, they found the worst of the amalgamated distortions, which made Moses' head pound, even with the white breath protecting her. A sphere of flesh floating in the air. Untold suffering and agony was with that one. One with the distortions of 100 people. Vesper shot a harpoon at it, which made blood spray out of the wound, but it didn't penetrate deep into it. Multiple arms were moving. Each was shaped differently and made of different types of matter. Vesper severed the arms, and the tentacles... Oh, why, Project Moon? Coming at them. Ezra charged her fist to strike the harpoon stuck in the distortion's body, which made a hole that exposed the heart in its center. That needed to be destroyed. But the hole was closing up, hinting at an, healing factor, for lack of a better term. Moses told Ezra to stop the open wound from closing, and Vesper to cut the arms trying to grab Ezra. As for Uriah, Moses needed her to tie the penetrating ribbon around her pipe. Ezra and Vesper did so, while Uriah's purple ribbon turned Moses' violet breath into a matchlock rifle construct. Ezra warned that the walls were closing up quickly, and Vesper warned her to act quickly, as Moses struggled to ready her gun, holding it against her shoulder using only her left arm, which was more difficult than usual. She had to make this shot count, as it required a lot of concentration. She pulled the trigger, the projectile flying past Ezra's head and hitting the spherical distortion's heart. Anyone think that this distortion has listened to that Bon Jovi song? Well, that song by AC/DC was taken by Iron Man. Regardless, the result was that the spherical distortion blew up with a deafening blast, and the stream of distortions poured out from it. As for the Fixers and Uriah, they were covered in the blood and flesh of the person that they just killed, but were, remarkably, still alive. This story continues with Chapter 26, Expulsion. Well, 46 people in the cellar were dead. Vesper asked what to do next, and Moses told both him and Ezra that they needed to go up. Her shoulder was dislocated due to recoil caused by her firing the rifle accurately with only one arm. She felt completely useless. She asked Ezra to carry her on her back. Ezra complied and required Vesper's strength to deal with the rest. She can only take responsibility for him after they're done there. Vesper made it clear that while he was willing, they were allies purely by convenience. Then Moses was carried bridal style by Ezra, much to Moses' disbelief. Apparently, this was so that Ezra could respond to danger more easily, while Uriah in teddy bear form was sitting on top of her head. As for leaving the cellar, that was easy as the stage wasn't very solid and not too high, so Ezra and Vesper could easily break through and allow for an exit. As for what to do when above, well, Uriah closed the way to her workshop and the door revealed that it was blocked by rocks. Yeah. The townspeople seemed to disregard those that were trapped there. Vesper slashed the trapdoor open, and after Ezra dodged what fell from above, they jumped up to the surface level of the town hall. They emerged into a hellish scene. It was among the top 5 most detestable sceneries in Moses' life. Well, it's not the most, otherwise she would have been explicit about that, where distortions were entwined with each other. And it's not like those within the cellar, as they were compared to people with multiple heads, each asserting their thoughts. These distortions were independent and expressing their desires without restraint. She didn't want to think about it, yet it was right in front of them. Vesper wasn't confident that he could control the situation. Uriah saw it as worse than what was in the basement. Ezra was nervous, as they were each different, and they were killing each other. Yeah, survival of the fittest, the truest manifestation of the town's collective mind that had been suppressed and transferred to others until now. Moses asked if she could save one of those among the colourful distortions in the festival of that town. An eyeless, white-furred ape, a red 8-eyed tetrahedron, and a yellow mantis with a lion head turned towards their direction and wanted to destroy them. Vesper and Ezra could handle the ape and the mantis. As for the tetrahedron, Moses needed the pipe. She knew that she had only one option that could work. Ezra was told by Moses to put the pipe in her mouth. Moses took a deep, pale breath, which resulted in turquoise powder scattered around the town hall, which adhered to the distortions. They slowed down. This powder brought the living closer to mortality. but at the cost of some of her life force. Clearly, it's an ability of her pipe that she only used as a last resort. She knew that, well, she couldn't exhale a breath that could stall that many distortions at the same time. But she can confront one distortion, trying to save that one. But it might be her last breath. Ezra had a problem with her using that, as Moses promised not to use it. Then Moses told Vesper not to strike them unless they attacked first. Vesper was either unable to obey that due to them threatening his life, or he didn't want to obey that order, having run out of patience. Yeah, and Moses believed that she could reason with him. Then an explosion was heard outside of the town hall. She heard the footfalls of multiple people. They were familiar to her. It was a part of her past. People with black long coats and gold masks adorned with a single symbol of an eye. They stormed into the building. They weren't some cosplayers looking like they were extras from a Matrix movie, a Blade movie, or even a reboot of the Stargate franchise. They were the Ujats. Fixers working for Diaz. They formed a dark wave and ruthlessly charged into the distortions wielding scimitars. Moses understood the situation for what it was. She and Ezra were indeed canaries in cages, sent to make sure that it was safe for them to deal with. The pale breath incapacitated the distortions, so they were helpless. Then hee-joon told her that she didn't disappoint. He knew that he could trust her to subdue the distortions of that town without unnecessary casualties. He said this as he walked in, now that the danger had passed. At this point, it was clear to Moses that this request wasn't from Seven Association. Otherwise, they would have met him at Seven Association Section 2. It was from Diaz, and hee-joon was her lapdog. Yeah, the rot within Seven Association. As for Moses' office, they were her unknowing pawns. Moses saw herself as a hypocrite, unable to save anyone in this occasion. The Ujat caged the distortions and prepared them for transport, along with treating whatever injuries that they could. Clearly, Diaz isn't done with them yet. As for Ezra, she was at Moses for using the pale breath. Then hee-joon approached them with a warm cup of tea. Moses asked what Diaz was planning with the distortions. hee-joon claimed not to grasp what was in her mind. Moses was unconvinced. Although he wasn't expecting her to be with Vesper Crabro, N-Corp's taboo hunter. Although we can't be sure if he's telling the truth here. Although he was familiar with Vesper, due to him being Diaz's personal spy within Seven Association. Intelligence gathering is what they do. He brought news to Vesper Crabro, and Moses didn't feel any sincerity in anything hee-joon did. As far as she was concerned, he knew everything that he needed to know, even the fact that Vesper was with them. So he's likely aware that she'd be forced to use the pale breath. Otherwise, why would the Ujats be there? if they weren't completely safe. Vesper asked what that was. Then hee-joon handed him an envelope, and based on him crumpling it and throwing it to the ground, it was something that he was trying to avoid. Moses asked hee-joon to give him something to replace the jacket and shirt that was torn to rags by the battle that they had fought previously. He complied and directed an Ujat to bring him a white dress shirt. He then invited Moses and those with her to Lady Deer's palace once everything was in order in the village. Moses asked hee-joon if it was fun to mess around, sitting on the top of her head. He said that it wasn't pleasant, but considering that he's a clear psychopath, it's best to take his word with extreme caution. Vesper then asked if she can see the distortion from people. She confirmed that, as she was smoking a cigarette with her patched-up left hand. He asked what she could see on him. She saw tattered bee wings on his back. As for what was in that letter, it told Vesper Crabrow that he was fired. He was no longer a taboo hunter of Encore. Yeah, they don't tolerate failure, much like any other wing. Chapter 27 is next. The Mansion. Moses and Ezra were back in the care of hee-joon, although this time joined by Vesper Crabrow, the former Encore taboo hunter. They were driving in a convoy with Ujat vehicles. These vehicles were loaded with captured distortions. It felt like they were heading for a funeral within that car. All were silent for a while. Then Vesper asked where they were headed. hee-joon replied that they were being invited to Deer's place to rest their tired and injured bodies. This wasn't a good thing for Moses. She could already picture what would happen, but she had no choice by that point but to play into their hands. Moses asked if they'd passed her little test with more than a little scorn in her voice. hee-joon told her that they did, as her way of handling matters and the results produced were excellent, and Lady Deus would think that as well. Moses was sure that she would. Yeah, it's clear that Moses is more honest about how she sees Deus than Deus sees her. They eventually arrived at a mansion lit with fanciful lights. Even a tiny room there is one that the backstreet's inhabitants, well, the average one, can only dream of staying in. It's also a vacation home. Moses likened it to a pair of shoes put into storage as far as Deus was concerned. At least one mansion was owned by her in every nest. hee-joon led the way, and then Deus ran to Moses with open arms and hugged her. I feel so sorry for Moses right now. While Deus was warm with her greeting, telling Moses that she must have taken great pains to get her job done, Moses wasn't fooled and dismissed her praise, seeing it as what it really is, playing with her like a puppet on strings. Diaz telling her, in response, to not be so cold about it, with hee-joon sucking up to his true boss by agreeing with her about Moses' handling of that job. Then Ezra's stomach rumbled, which betrayed her hunger. Diaz prepared many rare dishes for them. She also allowed Vesper, the sassy but clad in yellow former taboo hunter, to join them. And on that long dinner table, 100 rare dishes were placed. It's comparable to the show-off cuisine at the Palace of Versailles before the French Revolution came. 6 people eating, but most of it would likely go to waste, where each plate and what was on it cost as much as a house in the back streets. But to Diaz, that meal was like them purchasing a sandwich at a ham pang pang. Yeah. Sounds trivial to Diaz, doesn't it? And it shows the inequality of this society. One that's blatantly obvious. But enough of that, let's move on. Moses understood that Diaz set up the scheme, as there was something that Moses wanted her to do, telling her to just get to the point. Diaz asked her if she could go to L-Corp's nest. Vesper understood what she meant by that, as Lobotomy Corporation fell there. Diaz barely registered him. It was also clear that she had a dream that she wasn't done with. Diaz had many. Then Moses processed this. L-Corp, a fallen nest. Yeah, she was a smoke war veteran. Several memories flooded into her. And then Diaz spoke of wanting quite a few favours from Moses, much to her annoyance. I'm guessing that if she had the opportunity to kill her and hee-joon, if she was sure that she could get away with it, she'd do so. Unfortunately, that would be suicidal right now. Considering Diaz's personal guard are, well, guarding her, and Moses is lacking a right arm right now. Okay, if there are any gods in this city, they're quite malevolent and vindictive. Considering what Moses, Ezra, and Vesper are getting themselves into. Until next time, hail the rabbit!